Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Thank you for joining us this morning. Hey, everybody. So, how many of you know someone, or how many of you personally have been scammed in some way while planning or taking a trip? How many of you know someone or have personally been scammed in some way by taking a trip? Oh, come on, admit it. And see, no one even wants to admit it, right? We're embarrassed about it, but we shouldn't be, because this is rampant, and more rampant than we might think. So I just want to give a couple of statistics before we let Marnie speak. Let's see. So MasterCard, this is data from 2024, found a 12% increase in the fraud rate during the early stages of trip planning compared to the previous year. And that included fake photos, fake websites, fake contact info. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the different types of scams that are going on right now. And the security company McAfee found that 28% of the people surveyed said they'd fallen for a travel scam while booking, and another 28% after arriving at the destination. So these are ominous data statistics, and I think it gets a frown, right? Fraud is bad. So that's why Marnie is here. She's going to help stop it, and being a representative for one of the largest online travel agencies in the world has a very big responsibility. So with that daunting intro.
Thanks.
Tell us a little about yourself too. Like, how did you come into booking? How did you come into travel? And what are your responsibilities at booking?
Yeah, so first of all, thank you so much for inviting me here. I'm really excited. I get very excited to talk about security. Not everybody does, but it's fun, I promise. So I have been in cybersecurity and technology my entire career. I have been a CISO for multiple companies. I spent the first almost 20 years of my career in financial services, and then some time in healthcare and e-commerce. And then I had the opportunity to move to Amsterdam. And I love travel, and so working for a travel company sounded exciting. So Booking's mission is to make it easier for everyone to experience the world. My job is to create a trustworthy ecosystem with customers and partners and make every experience safe and secure. So my team includes the cyber team, it includes the fraud team, it includes trust and safety, which is responsible for the general safety and well-being of travelers and partners during a trip, and then the physical security, so protecting our employees as well. So my job runs the gamut of all things protection. And
you came from outside of travel, but now that you're in travel, why is travel such a target? Would you say it's more of a target than other industries?
So it is not necessarily currently a bigger target than other industries, but what I will say is historically, the cyber criminals, and these are organized crime rings, cyber criminals have been targeting, government, banking, health sector, but over the last several years, the travel industry has really become a big target. Largely, I think, partly because of COVID revenge travel, right? The travel really, really picked up after COVID. And one of the things that makes it a target, and somewhat, unfortunately, a little bit of an easy target is, first of all, it's in our name, right? We're hospitality. We are there to help serve people, and we want to help people. And so a lot of folks in the hospitality industry are trying to make sure that they're giving their customers a good experience. And so when a customer who turns out to be a scammer sends an email to the hotel saying, hey, I want to make sure that I've got the right direction. And I'm not good with technology, so I've attached this map and I'm encrypted it. So here's the password to open it. They want to help, so they do it. And then they've got malware, or their account has been taken over. And on the flip side, travelers spend a lot of money and a lot of time planning trips to give their families a good experience. They want to create great memories from travel, and so they've invested a lot. And when they get a message from a scammer posing as the hotel or posing as Booking, saying, if you don't click this link and make a payment, we're going to cancel your trip. There's an amount of panic that happens there, right? They don't want to ruin the trip for their families. And so they click on it.
So they're very vulnerable at that
Yes,
moment.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So the trustworthiness, which you mentioned, is one big thing, because in the hospitality industry, we're just a trusting group, and we want everyone to have a good experience. And then there's that immediacy of when there is a problem. The problem might happen when you're in a strange country or in a strange place or in the middle of going from point A to point B, where you panic more than, oh, I'm at home and this is something I could solve.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you mentioned a few things, but what are some of the more popular scams that you're seeing these days?
Yeah, so we're seeing there's some trends. Phishing has been around since the dawn of email. I mean, I still have a Yahoo email from 1997 that, I remember the first time I got a spam email and a phishing email. So, but we've actually seen a rapid increase in phishing. Depending on which research you look at, some researchers will say it increased by 300%, some will say it increased by almost 1,000%. But since November 2022, it's increased significantly. And the thing that happened in 2022 was OpenAI, ChatGPT got launched. So that gives the attackers the ability to create more real-looking phishing emails in multiple languages that have better grammar, so they're a lot harder to spot. So if you feel like you are seeing more spam and phishing emails hitting your inbox and not getting cleaned up by your email provider, you're right, it's happening. So phishing is a big one. Credential stuffing is really increased. So,
what's that?
So credential stuffing is, let's say, so Yahoo's been breached a couple times, LinkedIn has been breached a couple times. What happens is the attackers farm all of those credentials, so the emails and the passwords that go with them, and they will sell them on the dark web. People tend to reuse passwords because passwords are hard to remember. So I do too, we tend to reuse some passwords. But what happens then is the attackers they'll buy these credentials and then create scripts that go out to Amazon, Wayfair, Netflix, you name it, and just try to log in with this combination of email and password. And sometimes they're successful. And generally they're going after places where there might be a stored credit card, there's really sensitive information. And so it just leverages the fact that humans are humans and we need to use the same password sometimes to remember. There are a couple other things that are trending as well. There are some nation-state attacks that are happening, and I expect those to continue and to grow. I want to make sure that it's clear. Nation-state attacks have historically attacked for espionage, so big companies like Cisco, banks, things like that. They're going after smaller companies now, partly because they can use that from a supply chain standpoint. So there are a lot of smaller companies that we all use for HVAC, for catering, things like that. And sometimes if the attackers can get in those companies, then it makes it easier to get to lots of bigger companies. But some of the techniques they're employing are North Korea has had workers apply for and get remote tech jobs. And what happens when they get these jobs, they actually have their laptop sent to somewhere else entirely. So there's a laptop farm that somebody holds, and somebody else is doing the job. By the way, the person you just hired is not actually the person doing the job. They're doing the job, though. They're getting paid, and all of that money is going back to North Korea. So there was a ring that was just taken down in Arizona about 6 or 8 months ago, and the estimate was that it ran for about 4 or 5 years, and they think about $17 million was sent back to North Korea. And of course, that's used to fund their own army. So they're employing lots and lots of techniques.
This is scary
Not
stuff.
to scare everybody, sorry.
No, that's okay. But it is really scary. And so you mentioned 22, and you mentioned because of AI and images. And so one of the questions specifically, and you sell so much, obviously, accommodation, right? Where people are looking at images. And you also, because of rentals, you also have a system where if I want to participate as a supplier, you welcome them to come in, post your pictures, set up your content, and start booking away. So how do we protect the guest, and how do you also protect the supplier who's a legitimate supplier, might be a legitimate supplier, and recognize those that aren't?
Yeah, it's a good question, because there's definite balance there. So if you are the property owner, if you are the homeowner, you want to get online and start monetizing as soon as possible, and we want to let you do that. But there's a balance because we have seen an increase in fake properties being listed. And so we're trying to balance how much friction do we add to the listing process versus how do we make sure that people get online and then we try to detect. So we do use, for all of these things, we leverage a three-pronged approach. So there's prevention, there's detection, and there's education. So from a prevention standpoint, you're right, the bad guys are using AI. We're definitely using AI as well. So we leverage AI to detect fake bookers. We leverage AI to detect fake properties. And actually, over the course of the last couple of years, as we have improved our models and leveraged some outside vendors as well, we've been able to block about 99% of fake bookings. 1% still gets through. We can't block everything. But obviously, some of this is cyclical as well. So during ski season, we see an increase in fake properties being listed, ski chalets. So 1% of a bigger number is still a little bit bigger number. So the second piece is detection. So we try to use our models to, if we can't block it, to detect very quickly. And we leverage a lot of information. Did the poster, do they live nearby? Did they put a bank account in that's different, in a different region than their address? And then also looking at reviews very quickly. If somebody posts something or sends us a question saying, I think this might be fake, we investigate as much as possible. And then the third piece is educating. I talked about the phishing earlier. The phishing is happening both on the customer side and on the hotel and partner side. So we put a lot of information out on our partner hub to make sure that everybody knows what we know. We're not trying to hide the techniques. We want to make sure that everybody understands what's happening. So we put lots of information out on the partner hub. We've put banners up on the customer sites, and really trying to get the word out that these scams are happening, because the more everybody knows, the better we all get at spotting them. And in fact, the hundreds of % increase in phishing we actually saw ourselves. We're using AI to block malicious links that are coming through our messaging system, because sometimes the hotels get taken over and they start sending messages, malicious links to the guests. So what we have seen is when we started blocking, we were blocking maybe 100,000, 200,000 a month.
100,000 to 200,000
a month. But several months ago, when I looked at the statistics, in 1 month, we blocked 50 million phishing links.
15 million?
50 million in 1 month.
Million. So it sounds like it's hard to kind of win this war. Like, can you win this war? Is it just constant battle? It's a constant battle, but you're still going uphill. It sounds a little bit like...
Yeah, I mean,
where's are we making progress? Like, do you feel like, I just shut this one down, another two came in?
Yeah, it's a little like whack a fraudster. But so yes, I do have hope. So it's not all doom and gloom. The scammers have always been out there. Fraudsters have always been out there. They just have new tools and techniques. And so they've always been one step ahead of the banks, looking at, how can I get in? How do I break in? How do I scam the system? This is just a new form of that. One of the things we do is we educate. We also share a lot of information. We belong to a consortium called the Retail and Hospitality Information Sharing and Analysis Center, the RHISAC. ISACs are there to allow security teams from companies in the same cohort to share information. So we're not sharing PII, we're sharing intelligence with them. So when we know that there's been a scam and we have an IP address or we have an email address, we share all of that. So it's largely, the biggest companies in the industry, in the retail and hospitality space. There is room for companies of all size, but we also are aware that lots of smaller companies don't have their own IT departments, might not have security departments. And so by sharing the information, we create, sort of a rising tide raises all boats. By getting better in general, we help create a more trustworthy ecosystem.
So you're educating suppliers, but what are you doing to educate consumers?
Yeah, so we have definitely, a couple things. So there's the education piece, and then there are the control pieces. We make sure that there are banners out there. We do things like this because we definitely want to get the word out that these are scams that are happening. Our systems have not been breached, but obviously attackers have figured out in Booking.com and lots of companies how to circumvent the system. So by educating consumers, putting banners up, saying watch for scams, don't go outside. I'll tell a very quick story. Was watching going back and investigating and saw the scammer was trying to send a malicious link to the consumer. And it kept getting redacted because we recognized it as malicious, and so we kept blocking it. And finally, the traveler said, your link isn't coming through, why don't you send me a WhatsApp? That's how these things happen, right? They were convinced that this was the hotelier, and they wanted the link, even though it was clear the link was being blocked, and we had a big banner saying, watch out for scams. So we've done other things, like we make sure, late last year, we implemented one-time password, which basically shut down all of the credential stuffing attacks. To log in, if you have to go get the passcode from your email, the scammers, as long as the scammers don't have access to your email, they can't get into your Booking.com account, they can't get into your Netflix account, they can't get into your Amazon account. So I always recommend using one-time password where it exists. We also just recently launched passkeys. We haven't advertised it widely, but it is there. So where you can use your device, essentially, to be your authenticator. So we recommend using multi-factor authentication wherever possible.
How often do consumers get their money back?
So we do what we can. So the first thing we do is work on, try to understand, was it the partner that was the victim, and then the fraud happened, because we want to make sure that everybody is made whole. The first thing we do is try to get the consumer to work with their banks. If they've used a credit card and it's fraud, the banks will do a chart, will refund, and obviously, particularly in the US, there are some specific laws around that. There's some specific laws around that in the EU. If that doesn't work for some reason, we will work with customers to understand exactly what happened and try to get a refund, or at least, again, make the person as whole as possible.
Okay, so Marnie, let's end the session with giving a 1 or 2 words of advice to all of us so that we don't, or our friends or family, don't get scammed during travel, booking travel, during travel, as we're enjoying our destination. Give us advice.
So always use multi-factor authentication wherever you possibly can. Almost every app, every website has it available. Always use it, whether you are the provider or the consumer. Always keep your applications updated. So preferably put on auto updates so that everything gets updated, but those are security updates that are often coming through. And just be vigilant, be wary, be suspicious if something comes across and says it's very urgent or appears too good to be true, it's probably a scam.
Thank you very much for protecting us, ladies and gentlemen. Marnie Wilking.
Thank you very much.